Do you want me? Yeah. Nova Southeastern University, the 44th Annual Commencement Exercises. Greetings. The trustees of Nova Southeastern University, the president, and the faculty bid you welcome to this joyous celebration for the conferral of degrees upon whom the university honors for learning and diligence, and upon those whom the university charges to turn scholarship into service. Will the audience please rise and join the faculty and the graduates in the singing of the Star-Spangled Banner? The words can be found in the front of your program. Please be seated. I would like to now introduce you to Dr. Frank DiPiano, Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs and Provost.
Thank you, Ms. Travisano. We welcome all of you who've joined us to honor the members of the class of 2013. I'd like to introduce some members on the platform along with me today. First of all, Dr. Abraham Fischler, who's the university's President Emeritus. Please stand, Abe. I'd also like to introduce the Executive Vice President and our Chief Operating Officer and today's Grand Marshal, Mrs. Jacqueline Travisano. And our President and Chief Executive Officer, Dr. George Hamberry. A university becomes great not because of its buildings or its athletic accomplishments, but because it develops an outstanding student body through the guidance of its faculty. Sitting on the stage with me today are distinguished members of our faculty and administration. I'd like you all to please stand and be recognized. Thank you. Assisting us today for the hearing impaired is Ms. Lisa Hendrickson and Ms. Kathleen Stephenson from Nationwide Interpreter Resources. I'd like now to introduce Dr. Karen Grosby, Dean of the Center for Psychological Studies, and Dr. H. Wells Singleton, Dean of the Abraham S. Fischler School of Education. Please stand. And now, to open these commencement exercises, I'm privileged to introduce President George Hamberry. President.
Thank you, Dr. DiPiano, President Emeritus Fischler, and our special guest speaker, Dr. Donald Mickenbaum, a clinical psychologist and distinguished professor emeritus from the University of Waterloo in Ontario, Canada. It's my distinct pleasure as Nova Southeastern University's sixth president to welcome all of the family members and friends and loved ones to help celebrate and publicly witness the hard work and academic success of the class of 2013. As you well know, today is about you, the graduate. But I would like to take just a moment, as Dr. DiPiano had done, to recognize the faculty for challenging, inspiring, and teaching you to be prepared to meet the future with great hope and anticipation for your success. Many of you have probably a favorite professor or two, but it's the collective shared knowledge of our faculty that has been able to allow you to amass from all of the professors at NSU that will successfully guide you forward. Please join me again in recognizing our outstanding faculty. I'm sure you've been told when you received your undergraduate degree that commencement is both the beginning and an end as you enter or progress into your chosen field. I hope you will think back on the relationships that you've developed while you've been at Nova Southeastern University, the friends, your colleagues, your peers, the family, the faculty, the staff that has supported you and been your cheerleaders and inspired you to reach higher than your goal. At this time, I will ask all the families of our graduates to stand so that the graduates may recognize and applaud you. I'd also like to recognize that this year, for the first time in our 49-year history, we've welcomed viewers from around the world who are not able to be here through a live webcast. Such a web through technology is enabling thousands of individuals to watch you cross the stage where previously they've only been able to see photographs after the event. Now it's live. As the 2012-2013 school year comes to a close, I would like to take a moment to reflect upon your time here at Nova Southeastern University, while keeping in mind that, like many areas, as I said previously, is not only an ending, but a beginning. You are ending your time here as a graduate student, and yet embarking on a new beginning. Perhaps further graduate studies, or maybe defending your country in the military, or going directly into the workforce. But no matter what road you take, I hope your time here at NSU has taught you the value of lifelong learning. Many of today's professions were not even thought of when you began to consider your journey in education. You've built a foundation to support any new activity, but it'll take a lifelong of learning to remain competitive in the global economy. You're now finished with your graduate studies at NSU, but hopefully you're not done with NSU. Today, there's 870 graduates out of 7,500 who will receive their diplomas during this commencement season at Nova Southeastern University. You will not only receive graduate and doctorate degrees, as what we're seeing here today, but undergraduate and professional degrees for 7,500 people. You are from all over the world. In fact, our graduates represent 100 different countries and come from all 50 states of the nation, Puerto Rico, the Bahamas. We've got graduates from New York and New Jersey, Texas and California, from as far away as Angola and Brazil and Colombia, Egypt, Jamaica, Vietnam, Russia, Ghana, India, Italy, and Spain, as well as Davy. Our graduates also include active military deployed in Europe and the Pacific and countries from Angola to Zambia. In fact, as I said, this year's graduating class represents 100 countries and the 50 states and all of its commonwealths. You keep our campuses and student education centers and online activities vibrant and awash. While you were here and studying at NSU, you've majored in the major areas of education, including speech-language pathology. You've studied clinical psychology counseling, general psychology, mental health counseling, school psychology, and clinical psychopharmacology. Of course, many of you came to NSU straight from NSU as undergraduates. And a bunch of you have come from undergraduate programs from colleges I will not begin to mention. Others took some time to come back to the university for your master's or doctorate degrees, and some of you transferred, again, from other universities. To give you some example, our oldest graduate this year is 81 years young. And our youngest graduate was 19 from College of Arts and Sciences. Since you've been here for several years, I hope you are aware of our Vision 2020 and the core values of this university. But two of the core values I'd like to chat about with you before you leave. The first one is community. And on this Father's Day, I recommended to my own children, and as your president, I'd like to pass on to you, to give back to the community, to carry forward that core value that we have espoused, and I hope you've learned, and actually you have helped us to gain the recognition of being a community-engaged university. But give back after you graduate and volunteer for those less fortunate than you. Core values that have been embodied at NSU, and because of your activity and the activity of your faculty and staff, the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching has recognized Nova Southeastern University as one of only 37 universities in the nation out of over 4,000 universities. We are one of 37 with the dual designation. The first is high research, and the second is community engaged. In fact, this year, we have been recognized 2013 as the President of the United States' highest education community service honor roll. It's the highest honor a college or university can receive for its commitment to volunteering, service, learning, and civic engagement, and a distinction for which we are very proud. This did not just happen by itself, but because of your engagement and all the other 28,000 students and faculty and staff that are at Nova Southeastern University. Give yourself and all of your colleagues a big hand. I hope you also will continue to engage in research, which is also particularly important at NSU, and it will be important in your life as well. Whether it's in education or clinical psychology or marine biology or medicine, research will be part of your life. But the work being done by our researchers, including that done by many of you who assisted in research as part of your program, make a difference in the lives of millions of people. With more than 152,000 alumni around the world, you'll find that sharp friends are in every corner. You're entering good company, and I know you continue to enjoy their company as much as I do when I get around to meet the alumni. Because you see, that Vision 2020 will only be realized through the efforts you make and your predecessors. You are indeed the embodiment of the NSU spirit, and together we are one NSU. By focusing on your goals with enthusiasm and the progressive realization of that worthy goal, the degree you will be awarded today will be even more valuable in the future, as the reputation of this university spreads because of your efforts and accomplishments and the individuals who will follow you. As I mentioned, community is one of our core values. The last core value I'd like to talk to you about before I introduce the guest speaker is integrity. And on this Father's Day, I'd like to challenge you to live up to the admonitions of Shakespeare, who gave Polonius these fatherly words of advice to his son Laertes. This above all, to thine own self be true, as it follows the night the day. Thou canst not be false to any man. You see, integrity is like a mirror. Once shattered, it's almost impossible or extremely difficult to restore. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat life for you. You'll be faced with temptation, you'll be faced with challenges, and you'll be faced with opportunities to compromise your integrity. You'll be tested. Life is not easy, and no one ever told you it will be. But I assure you that those individuals that lead an honest and ethical life with integrity and a good name, those are the individuals who really will rise to the top and be successful. So I end with these comments to our graduates. Keep your aim above your reach. Be bold and be persistent in achieving your goals. But most of all, maintain your integrity. It is, after all, your most precious asset. Congratulations to all of you, and best wishes. It's now my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Donald Meichenbaum, a clinical psychologist and distinguished professor emeritus from the University of Waterloo in Ontario, Canada, where he taught and conducted research for over 35 years. 17 years ago, he took early retirement to become the research director of the Melissa Institute for Violence Prevention in Miami. He is one of the founders of a set of therapeutic procedures called cognitive behavior therapy. In a survey of clinicians, Dr. Meckenbaum was voted one of the 10 most influential psychotherapists of the 20th century. Dr. Meckenbaum, born in the Bronx in New York, where he graduated from City College of New York, received his PhD in clinical psychology from the University of Illinois. He was an honorary president of the Canadian Psychological Association, and he's a member of the Royal Society of Canada and is a fellow of the American Psychological Association. He's received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Clinical Division of American Psychological Association and has presented in all 50 states of the nation and internationally. He has published extensively, and most recently, his book entitled Roadmap to Resilience is tremendous, and I encourage all to read. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Donald Meckenbaum. Dr. Meckenbaum.
Thank you very much. It's an honor and privilege to be invited to give this address on this memorable occasion. Over and above being a clinical psychologist, I am the father of 4 children, have 6 grandchildren, and my 4 children are married, so I have sat through many, many commencement addresses. And I can tell you that I cannot remember any. So the challenge for me is, what is it that I could say that might have a continuing influence on your future activities? Well, I really have a fascinating story to share with you. My area of specialty is studying individuals who have experienced various kinds of trauma and various forms of victimization. So I work with returning soldiers from Iraq and Afghanistan, with people who have experienced natural disasters like Hurricane Katrina, Andrew, and Sandy, people who have experienced various forms of victimization, of sexual abuse, neglect, exposure to domestic violence, neighborhood violence, and the like. Now here is the fascinating piece. No matter what form of victimization or trauma that people experience, the overwhelming finding is that 75% of individuals will be impacted, but will go on to evidence some form of resilience, some ability to bounce back, to confront adversities, and in some instances, even evidence post-traumatic growth. So the interesting question to clinicians like me, and perhaps those of you who are in the mental health field, is what is it that distinguishes the 75% of people who evidence resilience versus the other 25%? And if we could figure that out, if we could figure out what are the building blocks of that resilience, then maybe that might guide us for the future. But let's see if we can present data that's even more relevant to this audience. Consider that in the United States, approximately 25 to 45% of individual students from high school through college will drop out, will not graduate. And if you come from lower class, you have 5 times the likelihood of not making it. So the interesting question for me and for you is, what is it that distinguishes this audience from that 25 to 40%, especially if you're a minority student? Here's something you may want to consider. As a graduate, you are likely to make something of the order of $360,000 more than the students who dropped out. As a senior citizen dependent upon Social Security, I am pleased to announce that each of you will pay $100,000 more in taxes. And I am depending on you to follow through on that challenge. So the interesting question is, if 1.3 million students drop out from college and high schools in the United States, what is it that distinguishes the people who make it? So my task is to share with you what the research indicates are the building blocks that lead to resilience. Now, resilience is not some extraordinary activity. It's really what people have described as ordinary magic. And that consistent finding is that social supports, the guardian angel, the social connections, either to family, friends, or community, is key to making it. So part of what becomes really interesting is, especially on Father's Day, and as you wave to your family members, you need to think about what is the key characteristic of that social support. One interesting aspect that you might want to consider in nurturing your social support has to do with the nature of the partner, either male or female, that you hook up with. I have been married for 50 years. Don't get that excited, okay? So one of the things that becomes interesting is that when I met my wife 50 years ago, I was particularly fascinated, A, with her body, secondly, with her personality, and her potential companionship. I could tell you that there's one additional attribute you should look for as you select your social support agent. You need to choose, especially as you age, someone who will become a surrogate frontal lobe for you. This is someone who acts like a prosthetic device. So permit me to give you just one small example that you might take away. There I am driving on the highway with my wife next to me, and I have the grandchildren sitting behind me. And I have to get off to exit. Now, my wife will say to me, uh-oh. Now, when I hear my wife say, uh-oh, to me, I know she is about to become what I call a metacognitive prosthetic device. This is very important. Now, I want you to realize how complex this activity is. Because, first of all, she has to say, uh-oh, early enough in the sequence as to when I'm going to get off. Not only that, she has to immediately assess whether I have the skills to navigate over those 3 lanes to exit. She has to anticipate barriers of other people turning, and most important, that keeps me married to this woman, is that she permits me to exit and say to her, I knew the exit was here all the time. Now, of all the things you need to succeed, you need an uh-oh in your life. Okay? So one of the things not only that, you need to know that the uh-oh has the ability to be flexible. So I lecture all over, and when I lectured in Germany, I don't know if you've ever driven on the Autobahn. One of the things that happens in Germany is one person looks forward and the other person looks back, because they're going to run you off the road. And when these Mercedes and cars are coming that fast, my wife does not say, uh-oh. She says, move your ass now. So she knows when to say, uh-oh, and when to move it. What is a building block? A building block is having social relationships. And the key question is, can you say, uh-oh, to yourself? So when you just heard about integrity, when you get challenged, is there a way for you to internalize that uh-oh? To kick in that frontal lobe of higher decision making. First building block that you should take away, social supports. The next building block that you need to take away is the concept of ratios. Inherent in life are going to be the experience of negative emotions, of depression, sadness, of anxiety and anger, of shame and guilt. These are all functional and useful human emotions. The research indicates that you need a ratio of approximately 3 positives to every negative emotion. So there's nothing wrong about being angry or sad or depressed or anxious. It's what you do with that emotion that becomes so critical. And you need a ratio of 3 positives to 1 negative. So you need aspects of joy, gratitude, forgiveness, compassion, love, humor. And interestingly, if I had more time, we could talk about how the neuropsychology is indicating that there are biological correlates of those positive emotions. This not only applies to emotions, it also applies to thinking processes. So for every time you get down on yourself, you need to have at least 3 to 4 positive, optimistic, problem-solving, psychologically flexible kinds of thinking processes that go along with it. And interestingly, this applies in the area of social relationships. You know, they now can predict with pretty good accuracy the likelihood that people will get divorced at the end of 7 years. And what they do is they count the number of positive to negative interactions. Now, this is really important because you do not want to buy expensive wedding presents for people who are going to get divorced. So if you have a significant other who is giving you a negative put down, you need to say, did you hear what Mike and Mom said? You owe me 4 positives. Ratios. Whether it's in the area of emotions, whether it's in the area of social domains, or whether it's thinking processes. Let's talk about one other class of variables that turns out to be important in distinguishing those who are resilient, the 75% versus the 25%. While we spoke about human capital in terms of social relationships, while we talked about the relationship between affect, thinking, and social processes, let's talk about personal capital. One of the things that's really interesting that leads to success has to do with the degree to which people evidence true grit, perseverance, stubbornness. If you follow the recent book by Judge Sotomayor, Puerto Rican Supreme Court judge who grew up in the Bronx, who had an alcoholic father, who was diabetic and thought she would not live past the age of 40. When asked what helped her become resilient in spite of that, she highlighted stubbornness, of having a dream. In fact, the research indicates that you could predict from preschool how children respond to delay of gratification as to how successful they will be later on. And if you followed the recent articles by Thomas Friedman in the New York Times, he highlights that you need good problem-solving skills, because when you leave, it will not be an instance of you finding a job, but you're having to create a job. That you will be able to have to bring together all of your skills. In fact, Friedman highlights, and I'll share this with you, a website called www.hireart.com, H-I-R-E-A-R-T, on which you can go and submit resumes and then see the degree to which it matches job descriptions that are out there. So inherent in those applications will be failure, will be rejection. The key question is whether you see those rejections as learning opportunities. It's not that you have bad things happen to you, it's what is the story you fashion for yourself and share with others. You know, we are not only Homo sapiens, we are Homo narrans. We are storytellers. And I will propose that the story you tell yourself and that you tell others is critical to your adjustment and your future. Last item. Who makes it? Who's in that 75% group? It's not only that they have social supports, it's not only that they have the right ratios, it's not only that they have those psychological characteristics, they have something more. They are in a meaning-making arena. So if you read the work of Viktor Frankl, who survived the Holocaust, if you read other individuals who I cite in the Roadmap to Resilience, you can start to see the degree to which they transform their pain into a gift that they could give to others. One of the things that helps people make it has to do with the social organizations that you have been able to access. And I can tell you, having been to many, many universities, that Nova Southeast University has provided you with a unique opportunity. I have never looked out at an audience such as this and see such a diverse ethnic, cultural group. And I absolutely applaud each and every one of you for what you've accomplished to be in that 60% group. So let me conclude with the following. I'm a clinician, so I see a lot of clients. And one of my favorite questions to ask a client is the following. I say to them, I'd like to ask you something a bit different, a bit unusual. Do you ever find yourself out there in your day-to-day experience asking yourself the questions that we ask each other right here? That's a very clever question. Do you ever find yourself out there in your day-to-day experience asking yourself the questions that we ask each other right here? Because what I do in therapy is I'm modeling a style of therapy, a style of thinking. So I will ask you the question. When you leave this graduation event, and in the future, what will you take away? Who is the guardian angel for you? Who is the uh-oh responder in your family? How can you become your own uh-oh responder? How do you keep in mind the ratio issue? How do you find something that's meaningful? And most importantly, how do you create a life that's worth living, where you could have moments of happiness and be compassionate? I thank you for this honor. I applaud your efforts, and I congratulate you all. Thank you.
You were better than Bob and I. Very good.
Thank you, Dr. Meichenbaum.